Hello, I'm Peter Clotte in for Esther Githuri Ewari. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. U.S. President Joe Biden is in Italy for the G7 summit, where world leaders are focusing on global conflict, uncontrolled migration to Europe, and the spread of artificial intelligence. Doctors and displaced people in Sudan's Al-Fashir region say the paramilitary rapid support forces are attacking hospitals and camps. We'll have a report. And the CEO and managing director of a Kenyan bank shares his insight on inclusivity, serving diverse customers, making investments and impacting lives in Africa. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. U.S. President Joe Biden is in Italy on Thursday for the three-day G7 summit where the wars in Ukraine and Gaza are topping the agenda. The G7 is an informal forum with an annual gathering to discuss economic policy and security issues. The members are Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Also being discussed at the summit are conflict in Africa and climate change. Two sessions are being dedicated to Ukraine, the first including Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was invited to the summit. G7 leaders have agreed on lending Ukraine up to $50 billion using frozen Russian assets as collateral. President Biden and President Zelensky are also expected to sign a bilateral security agreement during the summit. Day two has sessions on immigration, the Indo-Pacific and economic security before the arrival in the afternoon of the outreach partners for talks on the Mediterranean, energy, and Africa. Pope Francis is expected to lead talks on artificial intelligence. In a suspected attack, Yemen's Houthi rebels have fired missiles that struck a ship in the Gulf of Aden on Thursday, setting the merchant vessel on fire, according to the British military's United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operators Center. Meanwhile, relatives of the Israeli hostages seized by Hamas on October 7th joined demonstrators gathered in Tel Aviv Wednesday to demand the Israeli government accept a deal to release those hostages. Carrying banners reading, "Human life has no price," and "Deal now," dozens gathered in the streets of Tel Aviv after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said mediators would keep working to get a ceasefire deal agreed.
I hope that for this time won't be a disappointment like last time and the time before that. We already had like 6 or 7 cycles of hope and despair and hope and despair. But what can we do? We are clinging on to any hope there is.
I think that's the only way that there's going to be a deal is if there's going to be external pressure, especially from the United States putting pressure, that we have to get to a deal. The hostages have to be released as soon as possible.
World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says that a large portion of the population in Gaza is facing, quote, catastrophic hunger and famine-like conditions. The WHO chief also says there is a real risk of mass starvation in some regions of war-torn Sudan, where conflict has made medical aid broadly unavailable.
Over 8,000 children under 5 years old have been diagnosed and treated for acute malnutrition, including 1,600 children with severe acute malnutrition. However, due to insecurity and lack of access, only 2 stabilization centers for severely malnourished patients can operate. Our inability to provide health services safely, combined with the lack of clean water and sanitation, significantly increased the risks of malnourished children. There have already been 32 deaths attributed to malnutrition, including 28 among children under 5 years old. While the world's focus has been on Gaza, There is also an escalating health crisis in the West Bank, where attacks on healthcare and restrictions on movement of people are obstructing access to health services. Since the war in Gaza started, 508 Palestinians have been killed in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, including 124 children.
Tedros also commented on the dire humanitarian situation ongoing in Sudan.
Sudan is the world's largest humanitarian crisis, with 12 million people displaced, 10 million internally, while 2 million have fled to neighboring countries. More than 70% of hospitals in conflict-affected states and 45% of health facilities in another 5 states are not working. And the remaining ones are overwhelmed with people seeking care. People are dying from a lack of access to essential services and medicines, while there is a very real risk of mass starvation in some regions. Critical services, including maternal and child health care, the management of severe acute malnutrition, and the treatment of patients with chronic conditions have been discontinued in many areas.
UN agencies have warned that Sudan is at imminent risk of famine, with about 18 million people acutely hungry, including 3.6 million children who were severely malnourished. In Sudan's North Darfur state, displaced people and doctors say the paramilitary rapid support forces are attacking hospitals and camps in the state capital of Al-Fashir. Meanwhile, non-profits say the world is paying little attention as a city that was supposed to be a safe haven for those forced out of their homes by Sudan's war is being torn apart. Henry Wilkins reports.
Al-Fashir, the capital city of North Darfur state, was supposed to be safe. About 800,000 people displaced by fighting and alleged ethnic cleansing in the surrounding Darfur countryside have fled here hoping to find refuge. But since mid-April, Al-Fashir too has become a war zone. Refugee camps have been caught in the crossfire and even shelled as the Sudanese military battles the paramilitary rapid support forces for control of the city. More than 1,200 have been killed, says Doctors Without Borders. From inside Al-Fashir, Adam Rojal, a spokesperson for a local non-profit helping Darfur's displaced, told VOA that people here don't care about the warring sides. They just want the fighting to stop.
They are not patriots because they're fighting for their own interests. The only loser is the society of Sudan, especially the people in Darfur. People have lost everything, even the basic needs of human life like food, water, shelter, and medicine. Words can't describe how serious this crisis is.
Claire Nicolette works with the non-profit Doctors Without Borders, which operates medical facilities in Al-Fashir. She said one of its maternity wards was shelled, as well as the main surgical hospital.
The roof fall down on babies that were inside the hospital, and we had to close down after the death of these 2 children. Surgical hospital, I can say, which is receiving all the wounded at the moment, has been touched 4 times now in 10 days.
Nicolette said calls from the UN, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and other members of the international community to end the fighting in Al-Fashir have gone unheeded. She says the situation is only getting worse and that the violence is indiscriminate.
We hear about drones now, we hear about snipers, so we just see that the situation is just deteriorating over and over. It's kind of full war inside the city, so unfortunately there is no protection of civilians, no protection of health structures whatsoever. That's the reality.
Rojal says the fighting has prevented people from leaving the city and aid groups from delivering food to the starving within its borders.
In reality, most families live in dire conditions. myself included, because we don't get our share of the World Food Program aid due to the poor security conditions and the blockade.
Every day, he has been desperately sending pictures of malnourished children in Al-Fashir to the international press to try to get the world's attention. Non-profits have complained about the unusually low donations for the Sudan crisis, in part because of the Ukraine and Gaza wars, while human rights groups have criticised the UN and African Union for not doing enough. Meanwhile, Al-Fashir continues to be ripped apart. Henry Wilkins, VOA News.
The Supreme Court of the United States has tackled a variety of legal issues since its term starting in October 2023. From environmental protection to abortion to Donald Trump's election eligibility, the court is wading into legal territory not seen in modern history. For more understanding, let's go to VOA's Philip Alexiou live at the Supreme Court. Hello, Phil. Tell us about some of the top items under consideration at the Supreme Court.
Hey, Peter. Yeah, thank you very much. A beautiful day here before the Supreme Court. They're very busy. They have a lot of cases to consider and to decide on. But we do have one opinion that's already come out by the court that happened just a short while ago. The Supreme Court's upholding the full access to abortion of the abortion pill mifepristone. That pill is now used in half of the abortions in this country. Now, back in a couple of years ago when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, which legalized abortion and sent abortion back down to the states, the use of mifepristone has gone up considerably 6 months after that case. As many as 27,000 women ended up using the pill. Now, what we haven't heard yet is another case surrounding abortion that stems from federal law that ensures hospitals don't turn patients away when they're in need of medical care. So the Center for Reproductive Rights has a list of cases, one of which women in Texas where abortion is banned. And that's interesting because they were, quote, denied abortion care despite facing dire pregnancy complications. So where does federal law going to stand on that? If you need an abortion or you need abortion care and you go into a state that does not allow abortion unless the mother's life is at risk. So that might have to be cleared up by the court as well. Now, with regard to the other big case stemming from immunity with regard to President Donald Trump and also obstruction, first with President Trump, he believes that when he was president, that he should have immunity from criminal charges stemming from alleged attempts to overturn the President Biden's 2020 election victory. The president is granted immunity for official acts while president, but does he get immunity from criminal or liability prosecution? And President Trump is arguing that a president may only be subject to criminal prosecution if he's first impeached by the U.S. House and then convicted by the U.S. Senate. And then that overflows into the obstruction case where there's a federal...
Thank you very much, Phil. Phil, thanks. Viewers, Philip Alexiou reporting from the Supreme Court here in Washington. The son of U.S. President Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, was convicted Tuesday on 3 felony charges related to his purchase of a gun back in 2018. The jury only need a few hours to reach their verdict in Wilmington, Delaware. Meantime, President Biden says he will accept the outcome and respect the judicial process going forward. Here again is VOA's Philip Alexiou, who talks with John Fortier, Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute about the verdict.
John Fortier, Senior Fellow with the American Enterprise Institute, thank you very much for joining us. First of all, with regard to the Hunter Biden conviction, why did the case take actually 6 years to try?
Well, of course, there was some controversy about some of the materials at first. I will add also that we had a change of administration, and there was a set of things going on with the case that looked like there might be a plea agreement where there would be no conviction and there would be just an agreement without prison time. at the last minute, a judge looked at it and said, look, that's maybe a little too generous. And at least one of the charges, or a set of the charges, were then continued on and actually went to court. So a lot of twists and turns, and unfortunately happening close to an election, as some of our other cases are.
Okay, so the President of the United States, his son is convicted of 3 felony counts, guilty of lying to a federally licensed gun dealer, making a false claim on the application saying he was not a drug user, and then, of course, possessing the gun for 11 days. Now, when you look at this case and you look at history, and this is happening during an election year for President of the United States, what do you glean from this, and what do you find rather unique about the current environment with regard to a former president of the United States being convicted of a felony, the president of the United States, his son, being convicted of a felony?
Well, several things are unprecedented. Of course, a presidential candidate, former president, not only being convicted, but also having a number of other cases still potentially active out there against him, as well as the son of the president. I mean, one big takeaway is that we have been reluctant to take legal action against candidates and people related to the election as we get close to the election. And now that seems to be a norm that we've broken. So at the end of the day, what you think about Donald Trump or Joe Biden's son, I think the fact that we've got a lot more legal action in the middle of the campaign is not a good thing for anyone. And I think the hope is that ultimately the ballot box will decide differences first and foremost, and the legal cases will be something that doesn't interfere with that election.
How do you see the conviction of Hunter Biden? Where do you think it will end up going? Do you really think he'll serve any time? But was there anything unique about it other than that he was the son of the President of the United States?
Well, I think that's the main thing, and both sides will point to some ways in which they think the court should have been harder on Hunter Biden, or that they are bringing up a case that really isn't pushed forward very often or this far for other defendants. So I think there's some political discussion about this. Will he serve jail time? That's a little hard to know. I think it'll be, if it is, it'll be on the lower end of things. And ultimately, will it affect public opinion? I think as we have 2 well-known candidates, we have an election coming up, and with all this litigation, many people are starting to say, you know, this is a little bit of politics, and we're going to go back to our priors rather than think about the outcomes of these cases.
Hunter Biden faces a potential 25 years in prison, though as a first-time offender, he is likely to get far less time or avoid prison entirely. The National Geographic Explorers Festival, an annual meeting that brings together conservationists, explorers, educators, and storytellers from around the world, is underway here in Washington. The explorers meet to share their discoveries, insights, and global solutions for creating a more sustainable future. Viewers, Jackson Vunganyi joins us live from George Washington University here. He says that this year's festival recognizes newly honored pioneers of change whose work is making a difference in the world through the Wayfinder Award. Hello, Jackson. How are you?
Hi, Peter. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thank you. So who are some of the explorers this year, and who are those representing the continent, Africa?
Right. Peter, like you said, each year since 2017, the National Geographic Explorer Festival brings together scientists, conservationists, storytellers from around the world, and many also coming from Africa. And really the purpose is to connect with each other, to collaborate on projects, and really inspire each other on how to care for our planet. This year, we have many explorers from Africa. We have, for example, Aika here from Tanzania. She's a storyteller, filmmaker around issues of conservation. And Aika, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the festival. What kind of perspective do you bring as an African storyteller to issues of conservation and wildlife?
As a National Geographic explorer, I love telling stories that are more about the solutions that are being devised and around conservation. So a lot of the times, the stories about Africa are really about like the problems and the issues. I really love to cover the side of what are the communities doing to solve the problems that they're facing.
Yeah. Right, Saika is from Tanzania, like you said. We have others like Noel and Pragna from South Africa who are on a mission to bring storytellers like herself to tell African stories from their own perspective. We have others like Kerlin from Angola, who's working to protect the Angolan Highland Water Tower. This is a water tower that provides water to 7 African countries. We have Nancy, a marine scientist from Tanzania, spearheading coral restoration efforts in Tanzania, and Aristide from Cameroon, working on conservation of the African manatee. Peter, back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Jackson Mvunganyi. That was viewers Jackson Mvunganyi reporting live from George Washington University here. Still to come, a Kenyan bank is making investment and impacting lives in Africa.
Dance are endless. On this week's edition of Our Voices, we will explore the incredible benefits of dance while discovering some dance techniques. Join the conversation each week right here on Our Voices.
You're watching VOA's Red Carpet. My name is Jackson Mvunganyi. Thank you so much for joining us each week right here on Red Carpet. We bring you the latest in
In other news, the Nile River is the second largest river in the world, and it provides crucial resources to 11 African countries. But plastics and waste are suffocating its waters, according to Reng Lueth, Executive Director at Community Action Against Plastic Waste, South Sudan. People who drink water directly from the Nile or from its streams are exposed to waterborne diseases, including cholera and diarrhea. Multiple southern African countries pushing against the United Kingdom's anti-hunting efforts suffered a blow when the Labour Party, which is expected to form the next government, committed to support a ban on hunting trophy imports. Angola, Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, Zambia, and Zimbabwe said in a joint statement that they are disappointed Britain's Labour Party will attempt to ban hunting trophies. Kenya's Equity Bank, based in Nairobi, is making investments and impacting lives in Africa. Its success is attributed to its strong focus on governance and support from reputable shareholders. The bank is also known for its commitment to inclusivity and serving diverse customers. VOA's Pauline Dio spoke to James Mwangi, the CEO and Managing Director of Equity Group Holdings, who shared his insights.
Equity Group is a financial group operating in East and Central Africa. It's a systemic financial system, one of the largest banking groups in the region, the second largest company in Nairobi Stock Exchange by market cap, and the strongest and highest valued brand in the region.
What has it taken for you to get to that point where you are arguably one of the best banks?
We focused on governance, and we strengthened our governance structures to the highest point possible. That enabled us to attract the best shareholders in the world, including the World Bank. IFC is the second largest, the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Norway, Allies, which is Norfund, Rabobank and FMO, and that really created confidence. The second thing was then really focus on being relevant to the needs of our customers. And the third one was being inclusive. We felt nobody should be left behind, from refugees to micro small enterprises to small scale farmers to the high net worth individuals, and anything in between. We gave them an appropriate product, appropriate and relevant channels for them, and that made the bank to be home to 20 million customers, making it the largest bank in the region.
Let's go back to the point you just made, making it relevant and making it closer to the people. What do you mean exactly? Right?
We decided to be customer-led or market-led, as people would say. Through focused group discussions, we understood the pain points of the potential customers. And then we tailor-made products to suit to those needs. We looked at the price point that they could afford the product. That eventually made us a high volume, low margin business to bring affordability. And we use technology extensively. 98% of all our transactions are now on digital platforms, and that has really made it scalable.
When I've talked to a lot of people, especially the ordinary person, they talk about the cost of borrowing money. In some cases, it's very, very expensive for them to borrow and be able to repay back. What incentives have you put in place, especially in your bank, to make sure that those small borrowers can come in, borrow money at a reasonable price?
We have used the twin engine model, and what the foundation which focuses on the social and sustainability aspect has helped us to do is to bring breaded finance on the table. And breaded finance means there is commercial financing, there is development financing, there is philanthropic money from philanthropists, there is corporate foundations, and that has helped us to formulate solutions like credit risk guarantees, which enables those without security, women and young people, to have access. Part of it also is about giving some level of subsidy to bring affordability. And that is how we have been able to deliver financial services to refugees, internally displaced persons, and beneficiaries of social safety net programs.
That was Dr. James Mwangi, the CEO and Managing Director of Equity Group Holdings, speaking to VOA's Paul Indiho. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.